Hello, Psych 101 students, and welcome to Module 5, Chapter 7, Learning Objective 6. This will be our final learning objective from Chapter 7, Memory Processing in the Brain and Distorted Memories. Okay, so not all brain areas are equally involved in memory. A great deal of specialization occurs. As you can see in the diagram, there are several different types of memory in long-term storage. Memories of different types of experiences are stored in different brain regions. So the hippocampus, if you look at the diagram, it's involved in consolidation and spatial memory. Consolidation refers to the formation of new memories. Um, the cerebellum is involved in implicit memory, specifically procedural memory. So it is used when we're doing things like riding a bicycle or tying our shoelaces. The amygdala is also involved in implicit memory and more specifically for emotional memories. So remember, the amygdala is part of the limbic system and it's our emotional center of the brain. And so this is where, your phobias might come from, or your certain fears based on memories in classical conditioning of implicit memory. So something happens in childhood and it might cause a fear that persists with you. Well, the amygdala would be involved in that. The temporal lobe is the place where we tend to store our explicit memories, you know, like our autobiographical, episodic experiences and our facts and knowledge. And the prefrontal cortex is where your working memory originates from, which is kind of like it's part of the short term memory system. It's kind of like your conscious mind, what you're thinking about right now. Um, so, okay, the take home message here, as this is on the screen, is that memory does not live in one part of the brain. Memories are diffusely stored across different brain regions. So, if you think about the memory of your last birthday party, for instance, it's not like in one location in your mind. A lot of people kind of have that picture that they store memories as these capsules in the brain, like little areas, store different memories. But it's not like that. If you had a memory of your birthday party, you would have the images, the visual images are stored in one part of your brain. You would have the music from the birthday party in another part of your brain. The taste of the cake would be stored in a different part of your brain, etc. So, a single memory from a single event is actually stored in multiple areas of the brain at once. Negative emotional experiences or events are especially likely to produce very powerful and vivid, lasting memories. We call these flashbulb memories, and we'll return to them later. Uh, so, uh, a researcher named Donald Hebb did a lot of memory research, and he was fond of saying, and this quote comes from him: "Neurons that fire together wire together," and this is known as Hebbian learning now. Um, Long-term potentiation refers to enhanced activity that results from the strengthening of synaptic connection between neurons. So if you, if you are repeating certain actions throughout your life, or even maybe on a daily basis. I mean, there will be a number of neurons, a number of the same neurons that always fire together. So, for instance, whenever I walk, there's a certain group of neurons that consistently fire in my brain, that are responsible for my walking motion. And so, because I walk so often, not as often as I should, but because I walk so often, those neural pathways are going to become strongly connected. Which is what he was referring to: neurons that fire together, wire together. You get strong connections between neurons that get repeatedly used together. Long-term potentiation effects are most easily observed in brain sites known to be active in learning and memory, such as the hippocampus. Um, and the same drugs that improve memory also leads to increased long-term potentiation. Those that block memory also block long-term potentiation. And so when we see the effects of drugs that either enhance or hurt your formation of memories, uh, we we see that it is affecting long-term potentiation. And so we know that this is what leads to better memories for events. You have neurons that become strongly connected as you consolidate and make new memories, and especially when those memories get used again and again. Either you're recalling the memories, or if it's an action memory, like such as walking, that which is also a type of memory, that would get used again and again. And so we've discovered, because of the action of these drugs, that long-term potentiation is really what uh, builds up strong memories. It is the wiring together, in a sense, or the strong connections between various neuron groups. I don't know if that really makes a lot of sense, but hopefully it does. Read it in the book if I missed anything there. Okay. I've already used the word consolidation, so let's go through it here. It's a process by which immediate memories become lasting through long-term storage. It takes time for memories to consolidate. It's kind of like making Jello. I don't know if any of you still make Jello, but certainly we did a lot when I was in my house when I was a kid. And it starts off liquidy, like you add the boiling water and you stir it all around, and then you put it in the fridge for a long time. And so initially it's completely in a liquid state, and then it takes time, and eventually it becomes Jello, where it solidifies. And that's I this is not this Jello reference is just my own. Okay, it's not like it's in the textbook or anything, but that's the way I think of memory consolidation. Like initially, it's very liquid. Like you could spill it. It could be ruined. I mean, it takes time for it to become a strong, well-formed memory. And one of the things that helps with this is sleeping and dreaming. It really helps with the process of memory consolidation. A number of experiments have shown that the importance of dreaming, in particular, to memory consolidation. And so, when just a little hint here, when you want to learn new material, or let's say you're studying for a test, for instance, it's really good to have a nice sleep after you've done a lot of studying. That is going to help consolidate that new learning, those new memories that you've formed of the material that you've studied. Without a good sleep, it's still going to be in that liquid Jello state. Okay. Uh, Individuals. Oh wait, actually, before I get there, let's go to this picture here. So this was a study that was done, and These are some brain slices uh, from during an fMRI um, procedure. So, um, MRI is magnetic resonance imaging. fMRI is functional magnetic resonance imaging. It shows activity in the brain. When you get one of these types of scans, it shows like which parts are active. Anyways, they did an experiment using an fMRI machine. So they had the person laying in one of the big tubes, fMRI tubes, and they had them while they were having their brain scanned. They had them first of all take a look at pictures. So they had a setup in the within the fMRI machine, and the person would look at pictures, and they took the brain scan. You can see the top left brain slice here. This is what the person's brain looked like as they perceived pictures. And then they also had them later on recall the pictures that they had seen and just imagine them in their mind. They have, to look at the memory of them. And what you see is that there's a lot of very similar activation. It's not exact, and you wouldn't expect it to be, but you can see it. It's very similar. The top and bottom brain scans on the left. The top one is when they're actually looking at the picture. The bottom one's when they're remembering the picture. Similarly, on the right, they had people perceive sounds, and you see the activity in the top picture. And then when they were remembering the same sounds, you see the activity. Once again, it's quite similar. Well, and obviously there's some differences. There always will be, but you can see that it's the same areas, basically same areas lighting up. So this shows that like we're using the same parts that we use like to look at things in, when we use our vision to look at things, and then when we think about in our mind, pictures of things that we've seen, or not pictures, but images that we've seen, we use the same brain part. So it's like the visual part of your memory is stored in a certain place that you use for vision normally. And so I was mentioning earlier when I talked about the birthday party, the parts of the brain that you use to perceive sounds. Well, that's where that's the area that you're going to use when you remember those sounds. So it's interesting. I mean, I find it interesting. It's like we don't have a separate area where the memories go. It's the same areas that we use to, as we walk around seeing things and hearing things and tasting and touching things. Those same areas get activated when we just imagine or when we recall what something looked like or sounded like or felt like. Okay. Um, Once again, returning to individuals with highly superior autobiographical memory, they show more connections in activity between the hippocampus and other regions involved in personal experience compared to those who do not have highly superior autobiographical memories. So you actually see that you can see in the scans that their brains are wired a little bit differently, which is what leads to their profound autobiographical memory abilities. Um, Now I find this really interesting, reconsolidation of memories. So let's go through it during the next couple of slides. Once memories are activated, they need to be consolidated again for long-term storage. This process is known as reconsolidation. Retrieved memories can be affected by new circumstances, so reconsolidated memories may differ from their original versions. So basically, you create a new experience when you retrieve a memory, and that affects how your memory is encoded and remembered in the future. So, what this is telling us is that just by remembering something, you can change the memory. Because it's like you pull the memory from the areas that's stored, and then you're thinking about it like given, given your new circumstances, like I might be recalling a childhood memory, I would have a different perspective now. I might, I might think about the situation differently. I might imagine it differently than I would have as a child. And then I have to like reconsolidate the memory, I have to restore it. And the memory is going to be different. It's going to include my adult perceptions that weren't there in the original memory when I was a child. Here's a diagram. Oops, sorry. Here's a diagram kind of showing the procedure. Um, that you initially, over on the left here, you have some experience in life, you encode it, you consolidate that memory and store it in your brain. At some point, you retrieve it. You remember your last birthday party, let's say. Um, when you recall it, you're recalling it in a new experience. And so you add to it. You add, your current circumstances or your current viewpoint of it, and then you re-encode it again and reconsolidate the memory. And so it becomes a slightly different memory. So every time we remember something, we actually change the memory. So reconsolidation means that memories can change each time you retrieve them. Each memory is of the previous retrieval, not the original experience. So the next time, so over here at the far right, the next time I retrieve that memory, I'm retrieving, the memory of the last time I recalled it, not the original. I'm not retrieving the original memory. I'm retrieving that new reconsolidated, probably distorted memory. New information becomes paired with the retrieved memory to create these new reconsolidated memories. Okay, so your memory changes each time you recall it. So this means that any long-term memory that you have that you've accessed over and over again, like for instance, let's say you have a story that you like to tell from your childhood. And by this time in life, maybe there's been a dozen, or maybe there's been 20 times you've told the story over the years, or even more. There are sometimes we have favorite stories that we tell to friends or at parties, or and they're because they're funny childhood stories. What you have to understand is that memory, if you've recalled it a lot of times, it's probably quite distorted from the original experience. But you would have no way of noticing. It will still feel like like the original memory. Um, just to um, just to give you like, I don't know, a simple example. Like let's say I meet up with a group of friends, and we've been friends for a lot of years, and I actually have a group of friends I meet up with, once or twice a year, usually every summer, and we all went to graduate school together back in the early '90s, and uh, and so sometimes we tell, we recall funny experiences or memories or things. And so imagine like I get together with my friends, and it's like, and I'm like, oh yeah, remember that time that we ended up racing that real jerky who was driving that red Corvette, and we raced him just for the fun of it, and so I recall this memory, and then all of a sudden my friends go, "Oh, it wasn't a red Corvette, it was green." I go, "What? No, I can see it in my mind. It was red." And then they say, "No," and they convince me, "No, I'm wrong. It was green." And then like let's say 5 years go by. The next time I remember that story, maybe I'm at home telling my wife, "Yeah, this is a story that happened with me and my friends." I'm going to be telling her, "Yeah, we raced this guy in a green Corvette," and that's what I'm going to see in my mind. In the original, I originally had a memory of a red Corvette. That's what I saw. Now my memory is going to be different. Um, and even whether or not it was red or green, like I've changed it. Like maybe my friends were wrong. Maybe it was really red, but my memory will change based on new information. So when I reconsolidate that memory after they corrected me, then all of a sudden my memory, the car took on a different color in my memory. This is the kind of changes that happen. Details change, and even sometimes, it can be, more important than the color of a car, but a lot of details will change based on any kind of new thoughts you have about it or new input about the experience. Okay, so basically, part of what I'm saying is, you should never completely trust old memories because you've probably recalled them and distorted them over time, and sometimes it leads to arguments. People get in arguments about this happened, no, this happened, and the reason why is that we tend to believe what we see in our mind. We believe our memories, but you have to understand that in many cases they're going to include errors, things that have been added over time that didn't really occur. All right. So, as I just talked about, distortion. Human memory is not a perfect, accurate representation of the past. It is flawed. Distortion occurs for many reasons. It can be due to memory bias, flashbulb memories, misattribution, suggestibility, and false memories. We will talk about each of these types of distortions in the rest of this learning objective. So let's begin with memory bias. Um, Memory bias is the changing of memories over time so that they become more consistent with our current beliefs or attitudes. And this is because we like to appear consistent. So let's say, I like to think of myself now in my older years as somebody uh, that has no biases towards people. Like, I I I don't know. I like to believe I'm a supporter of people that need help, and and that I don't have any kind of racism or homophobia or gender biases or things like that. I kind of basically realized over the years that it's all silliness, and everyone's trying to do the best they can and live their lives, and we should never, really ever be upset or angry at anyone for who they are. But you know what? Let's say I look back in my mind, I look back my teenage years or my early 20s or something like that. I mean, there may have been times, and now I who knows? I mean, I can't tell because I know about memory distortion, but maybe there's times I used to be less sensitive and I didn't have the same attitudes. But when I look back at memories, I'm going to distort them with memory bias, based on my current feelings and being a little bit of a wiser individual than I was in my earlier years and my youth. And probably there's memories there's probably a number of memories I've distorted over time to come more in line with my current beliefs, where I don't see, who wants to look back and say, yeah, I was a real a-hole when I was a teenager or when I was a young adult, like I did a bunch of crappy stuff or had bad opinions or this that. Like what we do is we kind of distort them. It's like, oh yeah, I might have made a few jokes, but really I was very sensitive still. But and this is what we do just without trying to. It's just part of the human condition that it's like we like to believe that the positive qualities that we've gained through our experiences in life on this earth, that we always had them to some degree, even if it wasn't true. So this is one thing that research has shown that happens. We like to appear consistent, so we often distort our old memories to come more in line with our current thinking. Okay, flashbulb memories. These are vivid memories that seem like a flash photo, capturing the circumstances in which we first learned of a surprising and consequential or emotionally arousing event. So they have pictures here representing the Boston Marathon bombings and, of course, the attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001. And these are known as events that would create flashbulb memories. There are people that swear I can remember every detail from that day, when the towers went down, and they will talk about, vivid details like who they were with, and they might even say that they recall what they were wearing, or every event that happened that day. Like, um, anyways, although you may have the feeling that you remember certain flashbulb memories like perfectly, research shows that they too are prone to distortion. In fact, I mean, they tend to be no more accurate than any, you know, run of the mill memory that you have. It's just these emotional experiences create the feeling of vividness. And so that you kind of put that on your memories, like, I'm sure about this memory. It's so clear, it's so vivid. And it's because of the emotional impact, but the memories actually still get distorted, and are just as prone to distortion as any memories. So even though they feel like even though you might feel like you're more sure of certain memories in your life, research shows that it doesn't hold up. Um, it's kind of an illusion that we create, that we know something we have a perfect memory of something. Misattribution. Let's go on to that. Misattribution occurs when we misremember the time, place, person, or circumstances involved with a memory. For example, TV ads rely on this. Um, you know, people snicker sometimes, like they'll be sitting with others while and a commercial will come on TV, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, like I'm really going to go buy that product because of this commercial." And and it's the thing is, you probably won't, like, at that moment or soon afterwards, because you're not going to buy something just because the commercial told you the product was good. But you know what's going to happen over time? You're going to forget the commercials, but you're going to remember the message. And so I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a whole series of ads for some car. I don't know. Let's just say it's a Toyota Corolla or something. And it's and there's a whole bunch, and I keep hearing ads in the background, TV. I'm not really paying attention, but they keep telling me how great the car is on gas mileage, and it corners well and it's reliable. And then years later, I'm looking for a car, and I see a Toyota Corolla, and I've completely forgotten the commercials, but I have this feeling, or in this memory, like, I've heard that Toyota Corollas are really good on gas, and that and that they're reliable. I don't remember where I read it, but I picked up that knowledge somewhere, and this is the way TV ads really work. It's more on an unconscious level. We misattribute where we learn that information. So I'm believing that I read this somewhere about Toyota Corollas, or maybe I had somebody tell me about their personal experiences with their Toyota Corolla, but really it was advertisements that told me this information. But now I misattribute where I gain the knowledge. And it's really easily done. This is why they repeat commercials over and over. They're not expecting you to go out that day and buy a car. They're expecting you to, somewhere down the line, have the message in your brain that came from that series of commercials, and you will actually forget the commercials but remember the message. Okay. Another example is of misattribution is confusing a memory from a dream with real life. There's another form of misattribution, and people, it certainly does happen. Sometimes something, you have a really vivid kind of dream, and something happens, and then you wake up and you go through your day, and it's like you have this piece of information that happened in your dream that you may think is real. I mean, I've had my wife wake up and be mad at me because she dreamed I did something bad, and she had a dream where I did something bad, and she actually ends up being angry at me during the day because of it, even though obviously I didn't do anything. Okay. So misattribution, you're forgetting like where you learned something. You don't you remember like there's something in your mind, but you forget where it came from, where it originated. One example is cryptomnesia. We think we've come up with a new idea, but really have retrieved an old idea from memory and failed to attribute the idea to its proper source. This happened with George Harrison, shown in this picture here. You know, he was a founding member of the Beatles, and he was found guilty of plagiarizing another tune for his #1 hit, My Sweet Lord. Great song, by the way, My Sweet Lord. Anyways, and like, it's no one really believed he did purposely. It's just there was a song he had listened to years earlier, and he still, you know, the tune kind of came back to him as he was forming his own song. And this shows up every now and then in things like songs or in writing at times. People will think they have a new idea that they write about, and really they've actually read it somewhere before, but they forgot about having read it before. So like, it's not that hard. It's just like the TV ads. Sometimes we remember the message, but we forget the source, where it came from. We forget that episode of learning it, and so we might think it's our own idea or, you know, our own thinking. Okay, suggestibility. When people are given misleading information, this information affects their memory for an event. So, so this guy fits with, already you should see that this fits with the whole memory distortion and memory reconsolidation ideas that you know, memories can be changed with new information. Just like that story of me and my friends, and they told me it was the car was a different color, so my memory changed. Well, they've done studies examining this, and they're known as suggestibility studies. So in a clear classic series of studies on suggestibility, participants viewed a video, um, and some people saw the video with the stop sign, as you see in the top picture there. Some people saw the video with a yield sign, as in the bottom picture there. You know, otherwise the video was exactly the same. Um, when later asked, you know, when later they were asked whether another car passed the car at the stop sign. So the question included, you know, the word stop sign. Some of those who actually had seen the yield sign falsely reported seeing a stop sign. So it changed their memory. Their actual real memory was that they saw a yield sign, but the question, you know, suggested that there was a stop sign there. You know, did another car pass that car at the stop sign? And so when you get suggestion like that, it can actually affect your memory. And to the point that when you look in your mind, and you know, as we do, we can visually see memories, your memory will actually change. And so people had new memories that included a stop sign. Um, and very similar. I'll talk about another study is similar to this. A bunch of subjects all watched the same video, and it included an accident between two cars, and then different subjects were asked a question that included just one word difference. So one group was asked, you know, how fast was the car going when it smashed into the other car? Another group was asked, how fast was the car going when it hit the other car? Another group heard the word bumped. Another group heard the word contacted the other car. And what the difference in that one word led to was different speed estimates. Those that heard the word smashed came up with the highest speed estimates for how fast the car was going. If you heard just contacted or bumped, you had lower speed estimates. You know, the word hit was somewhere in the middle. Also, those that heard the word smashed, um, 1 week later, when asked about whether they had noticed any broken glass in the video that they had seen, many of them reported having seen that there was broken glass, even though there wasn't. Um, and and this was like they reported this far higher than any of the other groups. So if you had heard hit or bumped or contacted, it didn't change your memory. For broken glass, you said, no, of course there wasn't. You could remember that there wasn't. But those that heard smashed, their visual memories changed to include broken glass. This is how suggestibility works. It can be just, one word in a sentence that can change a memory. So the suggestibility of memories in long-term storage creates problems for one of the most powerful forms of evidence in our justice system, the eyewitness account. And by the way, these studies have had a huge impact on our feelings about eyewitness testimony. They have changed procedures in courts and among police because of these studies. So this is one example of psychology having a huge impact. Um, one of the professors that I studied under in graduate school did a lot of this kind of suggested eyewitness suggestibility studies, and it was fascinating. But it really has made real changes. So the eyewitness account testimony is prone to error because often the eyewitness is not paying attention to the right details when an event happens. For example, if you're in a situation and there's some suspect, like during let's say some crimes being committed, and if they have a weapon, uh, people pay far more attention to the weapon than to the person. I mean, it is, if somebody's holding a gun, for instance, like you'll remember the image of the gun much more than you will the actual person, because we tend to get drawn to things like that. Um, the way police interview eyewitnesses may affect memory, just like that last study. Leading questions can distort memory. So this is one of the things that's really changed, is they've had to train officers how to ask questions without leading on an eyewitness, and in especially lawyers and courts, and it's especially true if there are child eyewitnesses. They have real rigid procedures now about how they are interviewed and who can interview them, um, because it's so easy to distort their memories, and much easier for a child than for an adult. But it's just the wording in question. So, um, if the question a police officer asks you about, let's say, a potential um, sorry, as a potential suspect, if they ask a question in a way that makes it sound like they believe that that's the real criminal, like they're going to influence your memory. So you have to be careful how you ask questions. Eyewitness accounts can be extremely accurate, though, if they're taken immediately and before memory can be contaminated by suggestibility. The quicker the statements are taken, the better. Um, once once people, let's say, like, a lot of time goes by and there's a story in the newspaper and things like, or something like that, like that's going to be huge distortion to a person's memory. It's like, imagine, like, you think you saw, like, you saw some crime happen, and you think you might be able to identify the person, and the next day you see um that they've arrested somebody, and let's say the pictures in the paper, like, all of a sudden that's the picture that's going to end up in your memory. Like, it's going to actually replace what you actually saw. I mean, it can really make that kind of big of a difference. Here's one example where, it certainly went wrong. Michael McAllister is the guy in the top picture. He spent 29 years in prison for a sexual assault that he did not commit. He was misidentified because of his resemblance to a police sketch that was created based on an eyewitness description. The real perpetrator, who was a serial rapist, looked very similar to McAllister. You can see the guy in the bottom. There certainly is some similarity, but we trust eyewitness testimony much less now in the court system than we used to. It used to certainly be enough to convict people, but now it's not considered enough evidence. It is just a contributing factor now because we understand memory distortion so much more than we used to. Okay. Um, Let me give you an example of a study. Um, and you can play along if you want. I'm going to give you a series of words, and see if you can remember. See, and then I'm going to ask you to see how many you can remember. So here's the list of words. Don't write them down. Sour, candy, sugar, bitter, good, taste, tooth, nice, honey, soda, chocolate, heart, cake, tart, pie. Okay, if you all play along, you can pause the video now just and try to scribble down as many as you can remember. Um, I'm going to go on because I'm not going to wait like I would in classroom. But for those of you that may have paused and have come back, I mean, did you happen to write down the word sweet? And what they find is that they've conducted a study with these particular words before, and many people end up writing down the word sweet because it's related to so many of the other words. And anyways, if you did write down the word sweet, then you in fact have a false memory. You believe you heard the word sweet, but you didn't. And it just shows how easy it is to create a false memory. I mean, this is just a particular word, but it's you should, most people would think, oh, I know whether I heard something or not, but when they do this study, many people write down the word sweet because it's related to so many of the words, obviously candy and sugar and honey, sweet honey, and they have the word heart because of sweetheart. They have tart, sweet pie, always cake, and whatever. Sweet. They have the word tooth because of sweet tooth, and many people end up swearing that they heard the word sweet, even though it wasn't in the list. Um, so a false memory is when a person imagines an event happening, such as I remember hearing that word. He or she forms a mental image of the event. The person might later confuse the mental image with a real memory. Children are especially likely to develop false memories. In what's become known as the Lost in the Mall study, is kind of a classic study. There was a 14-year-old subject named Chris, and he heard his older brother shared a number of memories with him. So his older brother uh, compiled a number of memories from their childhood together, and most of them were like real memories that they had experienced. But it also included a made up story. So like the older brother was part of the study. So there was a made up story of Chris being lost in the mall, and that was included in the list, amongst the real memories. Uh, 2 days later, Chris talked about how he was talking about how he felt when he was lost in the mall as a child. And 2 weeks later, Chris had a detailed memory of the event. He talked about who came to find him, and he had all these details that he had now included in the memory, like things that his older brother hadn't been part of the original story. He had added a bunch of details, and you know to him it was a real memory now. And this was a 14-year-old um, teenager. So um, he had all these details of an event that had never really happened. And this showed that, just by suggesting that something was a real event, you can create a false memory, even in a 14-year-old. It is, by the way, it's easier. The younger the child, the easier. Preschoolers in particular, it's fairly easy to create false memories in them. They've done another number of studies showing that you can create, elaborate memories that just by having them picture certain things and then thinking they really happened. But this study was important because before this one, a lot of people didn't think possible in somebody that was already in their teenage years at 14 to have them create a brand, completely false memory, and then believe it and add details to it. And like I said, he talked about how he felt, and so it became like a real memory to him. This so false memories do get created, and that will conclude our memory chapter on memory, and that is learning objective 6 that we have just finished.